It is a limited preparation event where you literally get a topic and have approximately 2 minutes to prepare a speech that is organized on that topic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Jason up here, and we're going to ask the audience for 3 different words, just 3 separate words. And then what he will do is he will choose amongst those words and decide which one he's going to go with, and then give you a 5-minute speech that is very organized with examples. So if I could just have 3 different words. A word, yes?
Cows.
Cows. Very good. Okay. Wisconsin. Yeah.
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti. Cows. Spaghetti.
Elections.
And elections. So cows, spaghetti, elections. We have someone time. Okay. Time begins now.
There's a branch of psychology that recently came out called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It's also called NLP. Some of you may be familiar with it, although many of you may not be. Now, what's so interesting about NLP is the ability for it to teach people how to become successful and how to aspire to something that they want to become. And the 2 ways that people are able to do this and use neuro-linguistic programming to their advantage by adopting its principles at many different levels of their life. And when we take a look at elections, we're going to see for 2 reasons why people are able to adopt certain principles that allows them to win elections in multiple different ways and multiple different factors, and not just the most common way of getting the most amount of votes. And so the 2 reasons that we can see people are able to become successful when it comes to elections is 1, because it is often when the time is specifically right. I'm going to take a look at 2 examples of how we can see when the timing was right, people were able to win. But also, 2, it takes cunning wit and intellectual perfection in order to win an election as well. And however, during modern times, we can see this starting to fade away. But in the past, it was often seen that the person who was most witty and most cunning was able to win. So the first reason is that because the timing is right. It's when the timing is right that allows you to win an election. We're going to actually take a look at Rousseau's political philosophy. He was an ancient philosopher from hundreds of years ago. And we're going to apply it to the election of Robespierre. Now, when we take a look at Rousseau's philosophy, one of the things that he talked about was how people need to get the majority of the people in order to vote in an election. Quite obvious, something we all know. However, what he specifically talks about, though, is how we're able to get the goodwill of these people on our side. I want to take a look at Robespierre during the French Revolution and how he's able to do this. Now, Robespierre actually did this in a very unique way by timing everything just perfectly. Because he came in during a time when the French king was actually overthrown and unable to regain power. So what Robespierre did was he actually gathered a large groups of people in something called the tennis court oaths, and was able to gather the masses of society in order to support him, in order for him to be elected. But we can also see, too, that he actually timed it just perfectly, because had he done it too early, when the king still even had a minority of support, he actually never would have been able to live down in history as one of the greatest rulers of France during that time. Now, granted, he was fallen because he actually went through something called a reign of terror, where he began chopping off people's heads with the guillotine, and that generally causes people to dislike you. So, of course, his power began to sink as quickly as it rose. But we can see here that his timing was just right, just perfect, so that he was able to win this election. However, a more interesting and more cunning way one can win is by using one's wits in order to win an election. I'm going to actually take a look at Greg Hartley, who discusses how you can actually manipulate people's emotions in order to get people to like you. Now, Greg Hartley was an interrogator for the United States military for 20 years. Now, one of the ways that he actually wouldn't trust the people in the interrogation booth in order to get them to have him constantly come back and be interrogated by him was actually through manipulating people's emotions, including the prisoners who he was interrogating that actually like him, because he got them to such a point of desperation where they needed somebody's attention. And he was able to garner this attention through the manipulation of his body language, the manipulation of the way that he spoke to people. And these prisoners began to like him, and he was actually able to get them to elect him to be the primary person to interrogate them. But additionally, we take a look at Charlie Wilson. There was a movie that came out recently called Charlie Wilson's War. Yes, he was known as a ladies' man and a womanizer. But the thing in the movie that we should not admire in any way. But what actually allowed him to become so successful and go down in history was the fact that he was actually able to get the support of people by actually manipulating them in order to like him. Now, how did he do this specifically? Well, his neighbor actually had killed his dog. by feeding it glass. Now, one of the most interesting things about this was his neighbor was actually running for an election during the time. And this proved a very easy tool to manipulate people with. Granted, it required very minimal manipulation. However, not only did he do an emotion moment, but he also, while he was talking to these people, he offered to drive them to the election booth. And would say, oh, by the way, yes, this is the neighbor who killed my dog inside a glass. Oh, and he'll be one of the people you can vote for. And through this cunning wit and being able to intellectually talk to people at the young age of 11 years old, he was actually able to overthrow his neighbor's election and cause someone else to be elected at the age of 11. Too bad somebody couldn't do that with President Bush. So when we take a look at the election and the ability to become successful, we can see how one the timing is right. The same way Robespierre jumped in at just the right time as the king was falling from power, however, ruined his chance by using the guillotine. And future successors soon learned the lesson. Let's not jump off people's heads as it makes them popular. And secondly, through cunning wit and being able to manipulate people's emotions in order to be able to like you, as we can see with Greg Hartley and Charlie Wilson. Now, with neurolinguistic programming, one of the main principles is understanding how you are able to speak to people, not only by the tone of your voice, not only by your body language, but also through your choice of words, in order to get people to like you and maybe someday win an election.